Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Ross. Now, one of the things that I think defines the sort of standard personality of the shop owner or the technician come shop owner is the desire to be a problem solver. Real motivators there that kind of where they're at, kind of where your head is at. I think probably I can see, even though we're on a podcast, I can see the heads nodding. You love to solve the problems, especially the tough ones. But in this day and age, with the cost of your time being at a premium, uh, maybe a different approach is in order. With me today to talk about that is Murray Voth, our regular co-host, contributor of sorts, RPM training. Murray, welcome to the podcast again.
Hi, Andrew. Yeah, it's really good to be here again.
Yeah. So, I think I'm sometimes guilty of it. I'd rather sit there and worry over a thing and work on a problem for hours on end on my own. And when, even just looking at YouTube or something sometimes for just smaller stuff would be super helpful. Um, how does that match up with where your network. I mean, your network. Obviously, the folks that are seeking you out as a trainer or a
Hmm.
coach. I mean, they made the first leap in seeking help, right? So,
Yeah.
isn't that the first?
So
Isn't that the first step in the 12-step program to being a better
it's
shop owner?
it's
First,
it's
ask for help. Uh,
it's funny that you should bring that up. We were in a we call it an all group meetup where of all my clients they can voluntarily join, and the only rule for that 2 hour session is to bring a topic.
right.
And we did joke about, putting our hand up saying, my name is Murray Voth and I'm an automotive shop owner. So it is a 12-step program. So yes, the first step is reaching out for help. But what I noticed in these meetings, and then it happened again today in another session with a smaller group, is that owners will say, this is just a small problem. I don't want to bother you guys with it. And we'll say, no, 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 come on, tell us, right? And they'll bring up the topic or the challenge. And sometimes it is simple and it's easy to discuss in 2 minutes and we solve it. But sometimes that question that they thought was simple or unique to them, we can do an hour and a half dive into it with everybody else in that group,
Right.
right? Because we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know what other people know, right? And so then today, high level shop in Saskatoon does a lot of testing and diagnostic work, specializes in diesels and late model stuff. And they were stuck not following a procedure or something, a mistake was made. But anyways, regardless of that, hours lost. And I said, well, did you reach out to, and I'll give a shout out to Diagnostic Network. Scott Brown is one of the founders of Diagnostic Network. And he's like, yeah, we finally did.
How many
would
hours
it ha-
later?
would it have been helpful if you would have done it sooner?
Right.
Right? Yeah, it would have been. And and as you and I were chatting before we turned the mic button on, there's this mentality of a problem solver that will reach out to only other resources once their own resources are used up, right? And I'm wondering, Andrew, you mentioned the word YouTube and going to a YouTube video. I myself have to try things several times before I go to YouTube. Again, older, maybe not. I mean, I am relatively tech savvy, but it's not my first instinct. But I look at my wife, who is the same age as me, and she goes to YouTube instantly, or Instagram or whatever.
Right.
And I'm just wondering, and just an observation in our own relationship, if I can make a huge giant leap, but also thinking about my daughter-in-laws and my daughter as well. I think males and male problem solvers, there's a bit of ego at play.
Mm.
It's like we're less than if we can't solve this problem ourselves. And somehow we have either grown up in a family that way, or a culture, or an automotive being a culture that way, that you're an island unto yourself, right? And so to the women shop owners out there, and the women technicians, and actually I got to meet a couple of women technicians last week in person, and they do bring a much better approach to problem solving. They're much more collaborative. They're much more open to looking for other resources, and in the end, actually find the problems way faster than their male
Right.
counterparts.
Right. Well, I
Right?
guess that's the point, right? I mean, it's the just putting it in kind of the nuts and bolts, and not again to cast aspersions at the expert problem solving skills of
No.
just about all the decent and amazing techs out there. They're amazing, but the customer doesn't really know what resources you used to get there,
Mm-mm.
whether or not solved the problem all by yourself on the back of an envelope with a broken pencil, or went to somebody else's solution they posted on YouTube and just copied it in 4 or 5 minutes or 20
Mm-hmm.
minutes or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
They don't know. They probably don't care as long as the solution is done. But you know who cares? The shop owner cares.
Yeah. Yeah.
and,
So
your bottom line cares,
yeah,
how long it took for you to come to a solution.
exactly. And
Uh,
and that's,
and
I think, where I'd like to
it's
go
really
with this, Andrew.
that's really what we're talking about here, right?
Yes, exactly. The bottom line financially and the bottom line chronologically, time, because time and money are this thing that are interchangeable, right? And as we get older, we can maybe have more money, but have less time, right? That's that world of these are two things that we have to manage carefully. So when we take a look at a technician getting stuck, right? I've approached it once this way, I've approached it twice this way. I've got an hour into this testing or whatever amount of time. I'm now going to reach out to my network and to diagnostic network or IATN or Identifix or whatever, right? Is it should be built into the process. I believe it should be built into, we give ourselves this much time as a technician, and then we go to a resource, right?
What a
Um,
great
where
suggestion.
right? Have a time limit to it. Well, here's another suggestion. How many times do our listeners have a technician be assigned a vehicle that has a drivability issue? All right. If the client concern is chugs up hills or blah, 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 does whatever. So technician goes for a drive, hour and a half later, they come back and say it's not doing it. Well, who paid for that hour and a half?
Right.
Right. I'm not charging a customer for doing, driving around. But the policy in my shop, this was in the 90s already, was um, experience client concern. You have point two, you have 12 minutes to experience client concern. If you don't experience it, come back, because your advisor probably didn't ask enough questions to determine that maybe it was random and intermittent, not something that happened regularly, right?
Right. And what were the
So,
conditions and different things? Yeah. Yeah.
right. So time is money, and that's why we need to stop and ask. Now, on the flip side of that, where this conversation started was with the modern vehicles that everybody's working on, is having the technician read the service manuals prior to the repair or during the testing and the inspection process. Because what ends up happening, and I hear this story countless times, is if I would have read the procedure, I would have realized that if I dismantled it this way, I wouldn't have broken this.
Right.
There's a set of steps, right? And cars are being built in a way that is not intuitive, like maybe they were back in my day, right? They're being built in ways where you're having to disassemble things in a particular order. Otherwise, you're wasting a lot of time and you're breaking a lot of stuff, right?
Sure. Sure.
Or when you come to software, scanning, reflashing, all this kind of stuff like that, apparently one technician reflashed one module and blew up two other modules because he missed a step.
Yikes.
But if he would have read the procedure, he would have realized that there was a logical sequence in how to flash situations and blah, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, right?
Yeah. So there's
That
a,
kind of a thing.
there's a way to be time efficient, and there's a way
Yeah,
that to not be time efficient. We
correct,
don't want to
right?
suggest that people skip steps out there, but
No,
things aren't always that simple. And now obviously also with the proliferation of vehicles and systems out there, it's not the same thing over and over again. More often than not, you might be seeing a vehicle of a certain model year that you might not have seen before, or
yes,
that kind of problem in that vehicle of that model year. I mean, it
yeah,
used to be we had, Ford and Chevy and Buick and,
yeah,
and that was kind of, there was kind of three and then a few other things,
yeah,
now, there's more than 30 manufacturers selling cars, plus their sub-brands and models and mid-year changes and updates. And, I think it's
yes,
literally impossible to know everything that's happening. I mean, we see it all the time. Uh, I'll just say that this, for those of you who think that LinkedIn is still a job and career networking site, think again. it is filled with expert exchanges of information in this business. And I'm talking about technicians posting videos saying, look, I had this thing came in. Here's what we did. Here's what I found. Guys, take this home for the next one you see. So a lot of that too. So there's a lot of resources out there,
Hmm.
to kind of stay up in your usual kind of information feed, but also, as you mentioned, a lot of resources to reach out to uh, if you take advantage of them of specific problems that come into your bay and be like, oh, you know what, I spent
Yeah.
45 minutes on this. I'm getting all kinds of contradictory stuff, and
Yeah.
I'm not. It's pointing me in four different ways, and one of them, and all of them
Exactly.
involve, pulling the cylinder head or something, and I don't
Yeah.
want to do that
Exactly.
until I know, because I got to take 15 layers of plastic off the engine before I can even get
Right.
there, and all that. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
and just sort of like, I guess, I don't know. I'll probably say this at the end again, but like, don't let your ego get in the
mhm.
way of finding, again, proper, faster pathways to the solution, right?
Yeah. Well, when you brought up the cylinder head piece, the image that came to mind is having a borescope that I can go into through the spark plug hole and inspect the chamber. And that brought to mind the knowledge of where to buy the proper tools and the scopes, and sharing that information. That's, I mean, my clients are always talking to each other about when they're making even a small purchase, right? But what kind of alignment machine, features and benefits, what kind of scan tools are you guys buying? And this is what I have, and this is what I'm looking at. What kind of air conditioning machine, the latest refrigerant, and again, they talk to each other and they say the dual machines suck, buy one of each and just move on. And they'll have these conversations. And imagine the amount of time and money savings when you're making a correct purchase for the tools. And going, oh, a tool like that exists. Like, I hear this probably on a quarterly basis, if not a monthly basis. An experienced long-term shop owner goes, there's a tool for that in a group because somebody else has discovered a tool for that, right?
Right.
And so that whole concept of, and maybe it's overused in some circles, of we don't know what we don't know, is powerful. If we can accept that we can't know it all, and again, like you said, we may only do that timing chain once in the lifetime of that model vehicle, because we don't see that many of them coming in. Which, I want to go down another path, but just on that note, because I want to talk about some HR stuff as well and some other things, leadership stuff. But on that path of working on one vehicle one time, that job, the tools that you have to buy one time and things like that, is the beginning of shops in the States. This is way more common because they have much more higher volume and population. But I do have a few clients that are beginning to limit what they're working on, and beginning to focus on their specialties, right? So in other words, researching the vehicles that are registered in their marketplace, and only working on 7 manufacturers' vehicles, and the other manufacturers they don't work on. They find referrals in the town, to send people to them. We have people moving towards the Euro specialization, right? The German specialization, the diesel specialization, and doing less of certain different things like that. Even for some of you in your shops, is maybe stop working on weed eaters and snow blowers and trailers and maybe U-Haul, and maybe just get your technicians working on the real profitable stuff. Because at the end of the day, charging somebody $150 an hour to work on a weed eater is not going to go well, because they can buy a new weed eater for the price of that hour of you fixing on it, right?
Right. And
So
if you're doing
chances
it for
are,
favors, if you're doing it for favors for the community members, I mean, your heart's in the right place, but maybe that's a job for the owner to do on his own time at home in his own garage, you
but
know?
so this is going to be another rabbit hole that I'm going to jump into before I go back
Oh
to the
no,
other
we're going to
topic.
be careful not to break any ankles here with all these rabbit holes we're digging in. So,
Right. Oh, I've never heard that expression, but yeah. Um, there's the kindness of our heart, the contributing to the community, the giving back, and all that. The impact of fixing one person's weed eater. Now, again, guys, there's always exceptions to the rules and all that kind of stuff like that. But think about it. If you run your business really profitably, and then you decide to donate to some key community initiatives, would that not have a broader effect with your money than just fixing one thing for a favor for
right.
$10? Right?
Yeah.
Like, if you, like, I know of shops that have the curling rink burnt down, in their small community, and there was a big fundraiser on, and they ended up being able to donate, easily from their profits, and still have lots left over, and be proper business people. They're easily able to donate close to $10,000 to that. Can you imagine what that looks like in the community if you're really profitable when you could do that, right? So think about how you use your time and how effective you are, and then what you can do with the effect of that later on. But back to where I was going to go with, you don't know what you don't know. So we can save time and make more money by knowing about tools, by using our information systems, by going to proper and appropriate YouTube channels. A lot of the software companies have Facebook groups, either by the software company or by an individual who's a super user that has created a group of support for your shop management system is available. But then there's the whole thing of, what does it cost you if you have to pay severance because you don't actually understand labor law, right? What does it cost you when you don't have a vacation policy and you have staff all booked off in the busiest month of the year? What does it cost you? And I could go on and on in terms of the things that can happen to us that cost us money, right? That could then save us money if we actually knew that process, right? So that's why being part of a mastermind group, in particular, my brand, the RPM Trading Mastermind Groups, is I tell people, show up at the meetings because you don't know what you're going to learn until you actually learn it.
Right.
Right. So brand new problem to this shop owner was an employee smoking pot at lunch. Right. And then his question to the rest of the group members was, well, have you had that problem? And again, some stories begin to pop up about drug use. And then it expanded into prescriptions, which are legal for the employee to be on, but can they actually be using driving equipment if they're on a prescription medication of some sort?
Where's the line, right? Yeah.
Where's the line? And so then I asked the group, how many of you have a drug use policy? Only 20% of the hands went up. Right. How many of you have an employee handbook that usually would contain a drug use policy? Half of them had an employee handbook, but it didn't have a drug use policy in it because the handbook was dated pre-legalization of cannabis.
Right.
Right. So think about the fact that, and this is a statistical number. So say out of 20 people in that meeting yesterday, 25% had a drug use policy. Half of them had an employee handbook. Think of the liability exposure that the rest of those shops have until they get this all teed up.
Right.
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 Yeah. Now, in case people think I'm a hypocrite, let me tell you what's happened in my life. COVID exposed my lack of HR knowledge and legal knowledge. I thought I was pretty good at it, all the labor relations and stuff like that. And it exposed huge gaps in my knowledge. So since that point, I have met with a company called Upskill Consulting that is an HR firm that specializes in creating employment contracts, employee handbooks, and stuff like that. Wonderful owner, Sophia. And I now hand people off to her. I don't have to know all HR. I keep up to a level of where I can inform people and scare the living daylights out of them what they need, but then I hand them off to her or other competitors of hers or whoever people are comfortable with, right? I too have now got a circle in my life of an HR expert. I have a legal expert. I now have a bookkeeping expert. I've got 2 marketing experts, and these are all people. These are things that I like talking about and dealing with, but I no longer am studying them because I don't have time. I am specializing in my coaching practice. So I too have a network of people, and LinkedIn, guess what, was where I got 3 of them, right?
Right. Yeah, so, I mean, this is it, and it occurs to me, I mean, in the topic of leadership that you sort of introduced, are you, as a shop owner, this is maybe a rhetorical question, creating a culture in which you encourage your techs working in the bays and your trusted experts, like your best of the best? Are they encouraged to seek outside help, or do you think they are, but they're actually feeling like if they don't solve the problem themselves, that somehow it hurts their status within the shop? Yeah. I guess you can just ask the question and then listen to the answers and then keep asking the questions and see what the truth is, because they might not give you the full-on disclosure of how they feel. um,
100%, Andrew.
in front of
Yes.
everybody. But this is part of it, right? It's not just, hey, what do you do? It's like, well, hey, what is the culture that you've built?
And there are shops out there. I think the last one in my circle, that person has retired. But over my course of doing this, almost 20 years, I've met about a half a dozen shops where the owners talk about several of their technicians who never share anything with anyone.
Right.
If they make a special tool, they hunch over the where they're working on it, because if somebody creeps up on them, they cover it up what they're making. So there's something about our industry and a culture where people feel like they can't share that information. Now I can see that coming in a flat rate world, right? Because it's a shark and it's a shark eats shark environment in a flat rate world. But these were hourly situations. But maybe they came from a flat rate and they just have a world where they don't feel like they can share information. So we do have some cultural issues in the industry as well, Andrew. I think that we need to continue to address.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's super interesting. I guess, the kind of in a nutshell, the the sort of three areas that I see are you know, ask yourself as a shop owner or as a tech, wherever your role is, maybe both.
Mm-hmm.
How open are you to reaching out? How long do you hang on to a problem? Do you hang on to it? Do you beat that problem to death until you can't possibly find a way to
Yeah.
solve it yourself? Or do you give it a good, honest shot and and uh, and then say, you know what, I'm gonna call for help or look for help from others, other trusted people, whether that's even in your own shop or just those other networking people that or like
Yeah.
whatever your network, which you should make a considered effort, like an organized effort to grow, for
Yeah.
sure. And the other side is are you encouraging, if you're the shop owner, are you encouraging a culture where your people, your team is like reaching
Yeah.
out and prepared to reach
Yeah.
out to each other and and
Mm-hmm.
and to the industry at large when they've got a real sticky issue. Use those resources. I mean, you're probably paying for a lot of them
Yes.
through
Right.
different subscriptions with different third-party
Yes.
software and information systems. You should use them. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess the last one is, like, you yourself as a shop owner from a management standpoint, um, are are uh, are you sure you know what you don't know? Because you probably don't. This is completely outside of being anything to do with automotive. But if you're running a small business, um, please don't try to do it on your own. You don't have to. I mean, you can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but some of those resources, um, they're not really terribly expensive,
Yeah.
and will probably save you. Never mind, like the on the HR side, saving you like huge costs legally and severances and other kinds of horrible, toxic situations. Um, but they should be manageable.
Exactly.
What am I missing?
Yeah. Nothing. Just the thing is we think we live on an island. We think we have all the solutions. We don't realize that there are other solutions. And watching my clients, the masterminds, bring things that they have invented to their peers is just makes me just happy, just joyful. Just today, somebody's invented a code system that is created by the team on the work order, and you can tell from the code what is the front inflation pressures, rear tire inflation pressures, where's the locking wheel key located, does it need a TPMS reset, and does it need a service interval or a electronic reset, all with a code that everybody in the shop knows ahead of time, all the information in the code. Like,
It's
I
amazing.
never thought, right? Who thought of that?
It's amazing.
John
You
did.
don't have to ask or look for whole forms or whatever. Just see it right there. That's
How much
amazing.
time?
I mean, you might come up with your own solutions, shop owners out there
Yeah.
for things, but don't try and come up with stuff in a vacuum. Employ
Yeah.
the resources around you. You will find, whether through like a coaching resource network such as what Murray's RPM training can offer. There are others,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
who do similar things. Though obviously, I believe we have the best. Uh, but use those resources, build a sharing and sharing culture within your organization. Also, you make sure that your techs and yourself feel really comfortable asking for help, because you know, it's going to benefit you. You'll feel better about it. You're going to, your stress levels will for sure go down. Your shop will be more efficient and more profitable, and you'll probably end up doing better work too.
Yes,
Great.
100%. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Murray. Thanks everyone for listening. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll catch you next time on the Great Canadian Aftermarket Podcast.